for as long as we've had real estate, we've had scams, but the extent of the scams has become more and more prevalent, and the scams have become more and more sophisticated in recent years. And this month, our reporter Konrad Putzier did a deep dive into the world of online real estate scams, and he joins me now. Konrad, this is probably one of the more interesting stories you've done since you've been here. How did this start?
It was a very strange beginning from our perspective, because the way it all started was we got a tip about this weird investment offering. It was online. It was this co-working company in New York City. You know, we all know co-working. It's WeWork. It's your WeWork competitors. And this company was offering basically securitizations on co-working desks. So they said, it basically means we have a desk. That desk makes rental income from entrepreneurs or freelancers who rent the desk. We're going to make this an investment for you where you buy the desk, in theory, for $25,000, and then whatever money the desk make is going to be your return.
So they had this trend, which is not really caught on yet, which is securitizing individual buildings. So this is like a micro version of that.
It was super bizarre. There's never been anything like it to our knowledge. It was the first thing like that we ever saw. So that was why we thought this was a story. And I think this must have been around New Year's, we published an article that was basically something along the lines of, hey, this is really strange. Look at this investment offering. Isn't this funny?
Yeah.
And then we got a tip that said, this isn't just a really unique investment offering. This may actually be something more, because this person called Renwick Haddow was involved. And we didn't know anything about Renwick Haddow, but after we got the tip, we started investigating. And it turns out that he is a infamous British career fraudster who's run alleged Ponzi schemes in the past and is now the man behind this scheme.
So we find out that this company, which is called Barworks, is run by this guy, Renwick Haddow. He's the mastermind. He's signed the leases. The assets are in his name, but he operates under another name, which we found out later, which was Jonathan Black.
Yeah, that to me was the strangest aspect to this whole story. It's not just that this is a Ponzi scheme, it's that this guy went to such lengths to hide his involvement. So what happened was Renwick Haddow decided that he didn't, presumably, I never talked to him about this, but presumably this is what he decided, that he doesn't want his name out there because he's had all this bad press in the past. He's been alleged of running Ponzi schemes. So the CEO of the company officially was Jonathan Black. And at some point we decided there's just no evidence that Jonathan Black exists. We kind of suspected that Renwick Haddow just made the name up, that this is his alter ego. And eventually that's what the FBI alleged in their criminal complaint.
What is it about real estate that is prone to this kind of sort of trickery, or why does it attract con men the way it does?
Yeah, to maybe take a step back. So we published the story that suggested Renwick Haddow was involved in the company back in January, so a while ago. And then I started getting emails and calls from all these investors who were very concerned for obvious reasons, because now they suddenly read that they possibly invested in a scheme run by a con man. And I noticed some similarities in all these calls. So first of all, a lot of people told me that they invested after clicking on Facebook ads, after getting emails. So there seemed to be some sort of theme that online advertising was the thing that brought them into this scam. And the other thing that everyone talked about was that they just found this New York real estate aspect so appealing, that they considered this to be a safe asset. It's not like investing in carbon credits in Africa. It's New York City real estate. WeWork, for example, has raised money from the likes of Boston Properties, from big venture capital firms. So people thought, real estate's great, it's safe, this is probably a good investment. So that made me think, there's a story here. There's a story here, first of all, about the rise of social media, about the rise of the internet, how it's made it so much easier for scam artists to
and things like crowdfunding have become so much more acceptable. People are used to now buying major purchases online, from flight tickets to, in many cases, real estate, right? This is not something that is alien anymore. Yeah,
and the interest in this kind of thing has grown tremendously in recent years. So we included some data from Google just to get a basic sense of how often people Google real estate investment, and the numbers have just increased dramatically in recent years, especially in China.
So these people, they come in, they invest money, they haven't necessarily done the due diligence that they should be doing. They come in, they invest money, they realize that they've been basically scammed. What happens next? Is there a system in place for them to get compensated or to get their money back? Is there a court that they can go to? How hard is it for them to kind of extricate themselves from this mess?
It's incredibly difficult, and I've talked to lawyers who specialize in this kind of thing, and what most people say is that in most cases people just don't get their money back. And in theory it's possible, right? The FBI could do an international manhunt and find Renwick Haddow wherever he is in the world, which we don't know. But in the past, we've learned that people just generally don't do this because they have limited resources. The SEC, the FBI, they can't hunt every financial fraudster. There's just too much of it going on. So what people usually do is, when there's a fraud going on, the money is abroad, the guys fled the country that perpetrated it, what lawyers would do is they would file a lawsuit against the company that worked with the financial fraudster, either knowingly or unknowingly. So for example, there was a case in North Dakota where two, I believe they were British nationals, I'm not entirely sure about this. They ran a real estate Ponzi scheme in North Dakota where they built housing for oil workers and told people to invest and actually didn't end up building all those buildings. And they worked with a law firm, and the law firm basically helped them set up all the contracts. And in the end, the investors that lost their money sued that law firm, claiming the law firm is liable, and they got some of their money back, but it was a fraction.
And I guess part of it is because the individual scams are quite small in the world of big white-collar crime. You're not scamming people out of $30 million or $40 million.
Yeah.
You're scamming them out of 100 grand or 200 grand. It obviously adds up, and it is life savings for a lot of people. Who are they targeting? Who are these people who are going in and saying, oh, I should buy some real estate from Barworks, or I should buy this student housing in North Dakota, or what have you? So is there a demographic? Is there like a certain type of...
So you would think that the people they target are people who know nothing about investing, right? That is what I thought would be the common target of a Ponzi scheme, but it turns out that's not the case. There were a lot of investors. There were some investors who didn't know much about investing, but there were some investors who were very experienced, who'd done very successful real estate investments in the past, who've been doing similar investments for years, and they looked at all the information and thought Barworks looked great. And so in terms of target group, the one thing that I've noticed is that it's just people all over the world. It's a lot of people from developing countries. And first of all, for scam artists, it's great because there's lots of demands, growing wealth in developing countries. On the other hand, it's also good because it sort of shields you from liability. Yeah. So if you're an investor, you're in Dubai, you're in Macau, you're in South Africa, wherever, it's going to be a lot more difficult to go to the US, find a lawyer, and sue the person that defrauded you compared to if you're someone in New York. And so from a fraud artist's perspective, the ideal scenario is you raise a lot of money over the internet, no one knows who you are, no one knows you're involved, and everyone's in different countries where it's very difficult for them to get together and go after you.
So we have some investors and we have an audience that is, so many people are looking to invest their money in real estate. Are there any warning signs, any sort of triggers that people should be looking for when making their investments? What are the red flags? If I need to distinguish a real investment from maybe potentially a bogus one, what could I look for?
I guess the biggest thing to look for is just very high guaranteed returns when there shouldn't be high guaranteed returns.
50%, 30% in a year.
Yeah, someone guarantees you 25% returns, no risk, it's a super investment that just doesn't exist, And it's, I guess it's obvious, you always have to ask yourself, if this investment is so profitable, why would they have to go to the internet all around the globe to find people to invest? Why wouldn't just banks do it for them?
Right.
Yeah.
What else? Is there anything else? Are there holding companies that are used? Are there different? I know in your story there was like an example where there were 6 different LLCs working on the same transaction. So one LLC received the payment, another one was supposed to give the investment back, another one was in charge of managing the payment.
Yeah.
Is there things like that?
Yeah, so you would invest in Barworks, you would sign an investment agreement with one entity, you would sign a separate agreement with a different entity that would guarantee your returns, you would get a certificate of ownership from yet a third entity, and then you would get your money from another entity, from a bank account from a different country. So there's not really one entity. If you wanted to sue that one entity for defrauding you, which one do you pick? There's like 4 or 5.
What happens next in the story? What are you looking at next? I mean, this is a world, once you open the door, you kind of feel like you want to keep going because it's so fascinating. What else would you like to look at?
It is. I mean, first of all, the thing we're all trying to figure out is what will happen with Renwick Haddow. He is on the run, according to the FBI, the U.S. Attorney's Office. It'll be interesting to see whether he actually gets brought to justice or whether he managed to get away with it. And then in general, it'll just be interesting to see if this trend continues, because the developing world is still growing economically. There's going to be more wealth hopefully in the next decade, in the next 2 decades. All that wealth, for better or worse, a lot of it wants to go into real estate. It's been great for the New York City real estate industry. The flip side is if more money wants to invest in real estate from far away, that's an opportunity for fraudsters. And so we'll have to see what happens, whether we're going to see more of this kind of fraud, whether we're going to see more regulators waking up to this danger and doing more to prevent it.
What I'm worried about is someone reads your story, sees how easy it is to pull off a fraud, and then maybe tries their hand at it. I hope that doesn't happen.
Yeah, what I'm also worried about is that people read the story and just sort of conclude that all investment over the internet is automatically criminal, which is not the case. There's a lot of great crowdfunding websites that offer legitimate investments, risky in most cases, but legitimate. And I wouldn't want to imply that all investment via the internet is bad. That's not the case.
All right, Konrad, thank you.